Valerian, a planet of sparkling cities and silver towers, had always been a world of discipline and grace. The royal palace, perched high upon a hill of white stone, glowed under the twin suns like a jewel. Within those walls lived Queen Lycera, a ruler both wise and patient, and her daughter, Princess Arena, who had not spoken a full sentence in years. Since early childhood, Arena had been silent. She moved through the palace like a shadow, graceful and quiet. She watched the world with deep, curious eyes but rarely spoke. Some believed she had been hurt by loss. Others whispered that perhaps a strange curse had silenced her. No one knew the truth. The queen never forced her to speak. She simply hoped that one day her daughter would find her voice on her own. The palace staff treated the silence with respect. They spoke softly around the princess, never raising their voices, and learned to communicate through gestures and expressions. Courtiers and diplomats visiting Valerian found the quiet, unsettling, unsure how to approach the heir. The princess's silence became part of her identity, making her seem distant, untouchable, almost unreal. But in the stillness of her private garden, hidden from the grand halls and polished floors, Irina allowed herself to breathe freely. Here, among the flowering vines and silver fountains, she could look at the sky and imagine a world beyond her palace. She often sat on the stone benches at night, gazing at the stars, wishing for something, or someone, that could awaken the laughter and words trapped inside. It was during one such quiet evening that humans arrived on Valerian. Their ships, sleek and dark, landed near the palace with a gentle hum. The humans were here for diplomatic talks, and their presence stirred curiosity and excitement among the Valerian citizens. Queen Lycera welcomed them with her usual poise, though her eyes lingered on her daughter. Wondering how Urena might react, among the human visitors was Captain Ethan Cole, a man whose presence was immediately noticeable. Unlike others who tried to hide behind strict formality, Ethan moved with easy confidence. His dark hair was slightly tousled, his uniform crisp but not rigid, and his eyes held a spark of humor and curiosity. While other humans bowed or nodded according to Valerian customs, Ethan often smiled, his gaze open and honest. The first meeting between Ethan and Arena happened by accident. During a formal garden tour, the princess wandered to her favorite quiet spot, a small fountain surrounded by night-blooming flowers. Ethan, curious about the palace grounds and unaware of royal protocols, wandered into the same garden. "Excuse me," he said lightly, noticing the figure near the fountain. "I hope I'm not intruding." "I was just exploring." Arena didn't move. She didn't speak. Her eyes studied him, sharp and alert, yet calm. Ethan felt no fear from her, only a sense of quiet strength. He grinned. "Well, I guess silence is your way of saying hello." The princess's lips twitched slightly, a motion so small it could have been missed. Ethan noticed. He took it as a sign of interest. "I'm Ethan," he said, sitting on the edge of the fountain. "Captain Ethan, and you are." Arena tilted her head, watching him, her expression unreadable. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed at a small bird perched on a nearby branch. It was a Valerian nightbird, its feathers shimmering under the twin moons. Ethan followed her gesture. "Ah," he said, laughing softly. "It's beautiful. But I bet it's prettier when it sings." He made a playful face, as if coaxing the bird to perform. The bird chirped, and for the first time in the evening, Arena's eyes sparkled with amusement. It wasn't a full smile, but it was enough to encourage Ethan. Over the next days, Ethan found ways to see the princess again. He didn't push for conversation. Instead, he let humor and curiosity guide him. He told her stories of human life, of vast oceans and small, funny habits. He joked about his own mistakes stripping on the palace stairs, spilling a drink, getting lost in the gardens. Arena listened quietly, sometimes tilting her head, sometimes glancing at him with a hint of wonder. One afternoon he showed her a small Gadgeto human mechanical puzzle. "It's supposed to make sense if you turn it this way and press it that way," he explained, fumbling with the device. The puzzle clicked in the wrong direction. then slipped from his hands and rolled across the marble floor. Erina's eyes widened, and a tiny laugh escaped her lips. It was soft, almost a whisper, but it filled the space between them with warmth. Ethan's grin widened. "There it is. The sound I was hoping for?" he said, his tone gentle, not teasing. He didn't push her, but he made it clear that laughter was safe here. The princess's private attendants noticed the change. Her eyes were brighter. She lingered longer in the garden. She even began to hum softly to herself when she thought no one was listening. Queen Lysera, watching from her chambers, allowed herself a small smile. She had waited years for this awakening, however small, of her daughter's spirit. But all was not quiet outside the palace. Diplomatic meetings brought tensions. Some Valerian council members whispered disapproval of the humans. "They are too reckless," one said. "Their ways will corrupt our traditions." Ethan, for his part, ignored the criticism, focusing instead on understanding the people and culture of Valerian. One evening, the queen asked Ethan to escort Irina to the royal library, a massive hall filled with ancient books, holographic records, and star maps. "She likes knowledge," the queen said softly. "Perhaps you can find a way to reach her there." In the library, Irina wandered among the shelves silently. Ethan followed at a respectful distance. He began describing the book's contents in light, humorous ways. "Here," he said, holding up a text about Valerian's history. "Apparently, one of your ancestors tried to ride a comet. It didn't go well. The comet laughed at him, more so the story says." For the first time, Irina laughed clearly, a soft and musical sound. She pointed at a holographic display of the comet, her fingers trembling slightly with excitement. Ethan noticed and grinned. "I see. You're laughing at history, not me. That's fair." The princess began to ask small questions. "How do humans?" She started, then stopped. Ethan encouraged her gently, filling in words when necessary. He didn't correct her mistakes. Instead, he answered her curiosity with patience, showing her that speech was not dangerous, but a bridge to understanding. As days passed, small moments of connection multiplied. Erina began to experiment with speech, first one word at a time, then short sentences. She discovered she could express amusement, curiosity, and even mild frustration. Ethan's presence, his humor, and his fearless humanity made it safe for her to explore her own voice. Evenings in the garden became a ritual. Ethan would tell human stories. Irina would listen and laugh quietly. They would watch the twin moons rise over the silver fountains, the stars reflecting in their eyes. Sometimes Irina would attempt a joke of her own, and Ethan would respond with exaggerated surprise or laughter. Each interaction chipped away at the years of silence, placing it with trust, warmth, and joy. Yet the world beyond the garden remained uncertain. Valerian citizens were curious, sometimes skeptical. The council debated whether the humans were friends or threats. Some feared that the princess's laughter and newfound voice would disrupt tradition, but Queen Lysera remained steadfast. She had seen the change, and she trusted the bond forming between her daughter and the human captain. It was not weakness, it was courage. One quiet night, Erina stood at the edge of the palace terrace, watching the twin moons glow over the horizon. Ethan joined her silently, offering a simple human smile. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said softly. Erina nodded, then whispered her first full sentence in years. "It is. Beautiful." Her voice was tentative but clear, carrying the weight of silence broken and curiosity reborn. Ethan's grin widened, not with pride, but with wonder. "You see?" He said, "It wasn't so hard. And now, maybe next time, you'll tell me a story too?" The princess smiled, a true, small, radiant smile. She didn't answer in words yet, but her eyes sparkled with a promise. In that moment, the bond between human and Valerian princess grew stronger. The silent princess was beginning to awaken not just to speech, but to life, laughter, and a world beyond the palace walls. Little did they know, their growing friendship would soon be tested. The political tensions brewing in the council, the cautious whispers of Valerian citizens, and a mysterious threat approaching from the stars were all waiting. But for now, the garden was safe, the stars were bright, and the first step of a remarkable journey had begun. The first laugh had been heard. The first words had been spoken. And the silent princess, for the first time in years, felt alive. The days following Erina's first laugh and whispered words were filled with a cautious excitement in the royal palace. Valerian citizens noticed a change in their princess. She wandered through the halls with a new energy, her steps lighter, her eyes brighter. Though she still spoke only occasionally, each word she used carried meaning. Carefully chosen and rich with curiosity, Captain Ethan Cole remained by her side, patient and unassuming. He had become her companion in exploration, her teacher in small human ways, the first person in years who could make her laugh freely. For Ethan, it was not just friendship. It was an honor to witness the princess awaken from a long silence and begin discovering her own voice. One morning, the Queen asked Ethan to accompany Erina on a tour of Valerian's historical archives, a massive repository filled with artifacts, star charts, and holographic records. The library was quiet, almost reverent, with towering shelves that reached toward the sky. Erina moved carefully between the aisles, her fingers grazing the edges of ancient tomes. Ethan, ever observant, noticed how absorbed she was in the texts and displays. "You have a good eye," he said softly. "Most people just glance at these, but you notice everything." Erina glanced at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I like to understand," she whispered, her voice gaining strength. Ethan nodded. "That's important. Understanding. That's how humans solve problems, too." He motioned toward a holographic display of an ancient battle, the fleet of Valerian, fighting off invaders from another system. "See how they moved? Every action, every decision mattered. Sometimes the smallest move changed everything." Erina leaned closer, fascinated. "And humans would act like this?" she asked. Sometimes Ethan replied with a grin. "But humans are messy. We make mistakes. Lots of them. Sometimes funny mistakes. Other times, dangerous ones." He winked. "I've made a few myself." The princess laughed softly. "Tell me one," she said, her voice curious. Ethan smiled. "Well, there was this one time on a desert planet. I tried to ride a sand creature like a horse. Ended up buried in sand for an hour while my team laughed at me." Very dignified, Erina's laughter rang clear, bright, and full of life. It echoed through the library's halls, drawing the attention of nearby attendants who stopped, astonished. No one had heard the princess laugh so freely before, but she did not care. For the first time in years, she felt the joy of shared humor, the warmth of connection, and the safety of being herself. The bond between human and princess grew stronger with each passing day. Ethan and Erina explored Valerian's gardens, climbed cliffs to watch the twin suns set, and visited hidden waterfalls where the water shimmered like liquid light. Ethan's presence encouraged Erina to speak more, to ask questions, to explore ideas beyond the palace walls. She discovered that words could be powerful tools not only for communication but for expression, for understanding, and for building trust. However, not everyone in Valerian approved of this blossoming friendship. Members of the royal council watched the interactions with suspicion. Some whispered that the humans were reckless, unpredictable, and could influence the princess in ways that might undermine the traditions of Valerian. One counselor, a stern Valerian named Thalen, approached Queen Lysera in private. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low, "I understand that humans have shown charm, but should the princess grow too close to them, it may weaken her position as heir. She is Valerian. She must remain pure in her role." The queen remained calm, her gaze thoughtful. "Erina is Valerian. She always has been. But Valerian is strong not because of rigid rules, Thalen, but because of courage, compassion, and wisdom." "Do you see courage in her eyes?" Talon hesitated. "Yes, but it is influenced by a human. That is my concern." Queen Lysera's expression hardened, though her voice remained gentle. "Then your concern is not for Erina. It is for your comfort. I trust my daughter. I trust that she will choose wisely." Meanwhile, the princess was unaware of the whispers and doubts circulating among the council. Her world was full of new experiences, laughter, and questions. One day, Ethan brought her a small human puzzle, something meant to challenge the mind. Erina studied it carefully, turning the pieces and watching how they fit. "This is difficult," she said, her forehead creasing slightly in concentration. Ethan laughed. "That's the point. Life is difficult, but that doesn't mean it's not fun. Humans learn from mistakes. Watch." He deliberately twisted a piece the wrong way, then let it slip and spin across the marble floor. Erina's eyes widened. Then she laughed a clear, musical sound. You are clumsy," she said, trying to mimic human words she had heard before. "I prefer enthusiastic." Ethan replied with a bow, making her laugh even more. They spent hours with the puzzle, experimenting, failing, and laughing together. For Erina, each laugh was like a spark, lighting a part of her soul that had been silent for so long. Yet the peaceful days could not last forever. One afternoon, a warning arrived from Valerian's orbital defenses. An unknown alien scouting vessel was approaching the planet. The council convened immediately, debating how to respond. Some advocated aggression. Others suggested diplomacy. The Queen remained calm, trusting her advisors while quietly assessing the situation. Ethan, observing the tactical displays, leaned over Erina's shoulder. "If they approach at that speed, they could reach the surface in 2 hours," he said. "We need a plan." Erina, unusually focused, pointed at the holographic representation of the planet in the incoming ship. "We can use the atmosphere," she whispered, struggling with the words. "They will down." Ethan's eyes widened. "Exactly. That's genius," he said, carefully guiding her hands over the display to simulate the maneuver. Together, they devised a plan to alter the approach path, using Valerian's atmospheric layers to slow the alien vessel. The council was skeptical, but the Queen allowed them to proceed. When the alien ship appeared in the sky, the plan was executed. It worked flawlessly. The vessel slowed, giving Valerian's defenses time to assess the threat. The aliens, seeing no immediate danger, eventually retreated. The citizens cheered from their homes, celebrating the success of the strategy. Erina's contribution was subtle, but significant. She had spoken, acted, and helped protect her people. And in the aftermath, she laughed again, this time openly, joyfully, looking at Ethan with admiration and pride. "You, humans, are clever," she said, grinning. Ethan smiled, but his eyes reflected respect. "You're clever too. Don't forget that. This planet, this future, it's yours to lead." The princess realized that courage was not only about fighting or strategy, it was about speaking up, trusting her instincts, and daring to act even when others doubted her. Her silence had been a shield, protecting her from the world. But now, laughter and words became her armor tools to navigate a complex and sometimes threatening universe. In the following weeks, Erina's voice grew stronger. She experimented with jokes, playful remarks, and even questions that challenged tradition. She spoke with the palace staff, the attendants, and even some council members, testing the waters of her authority and personality. Each time, Ethan encouraged her, never correcting, never judging, simply supporting her as a friend and ally. Queen Lysera watched with a mixture of pride and relief. Her daughter, long silent and misunderstood, was awakening not just to speech, but to leadership. The bond with the human captain had given her laughter, courage, and a sense of self. One evening, as the twin moons rose over Valerian, Erina and Ethan sat on the palace terrace, sharing stories of Earth and Valerian, of humans and aliens, of courage and mistakes. "Do humans always take risks?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Not always," Ethan replied. "But when it matters, we try. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we succeed. But we never stop trying." Erina nodded, feeling the weight of his words. And sometimes, laughter helps, she whispered. Ethan grinned. Exactly. Laughter and courage. That's how humans survive. The stars glittered above them, silent witnesses to a friendship that had begun to change a princess's life. Erina's laughter echoed softly in the night, a signal to the palace and the world that she was no longer silent, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Little did they know, the true test of Erina's courage and newfound voice was yet to come. Political intrigue, the lingering distrust of some council members, and the ever-present unknown dangers of the galaxy were all waiting to challenge the princess and her human friend. But for now, she had discovered something priceless, the ability to speak, to laugh, and to be herself. And with that, a new chapter in the story of Valerian had begun. The weeks following the incident with the alien scout vessel were some of the most transformative for Princess Erina. No longer silent, she began to engage more openly with the palace staff, the council, and the citizens of Valerian. Each word she spoke carried confidence and curiosity, a reflection of the courage and trust she had developed alongside Captain Ethan Cole. Erina's mornings often began in the royal library, exploring ancient texts and records. Ethan, as always, accompanied her, sharing human perspectives on history, strategy, and culture. They debated ideas, compared Earth and Valerian, and laughed together at small human mistakes. Through these conversations, Erina learned to speak with clarity and wit, to express herself beyond gestures and whispers. One day, the princess discovered a record of her ancestors' most famous leaders. She studied their strategies, their triumphs, and their failures. They were brave, she said thoughtfully, turning to Ethan. But sometimes, they listened too little to others. They missed the small things. Ethan nodded. Humans are the same. Bravery without understanding can be dangerous. But listening, that's wisdom. You already have it. Erina smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. I will try. I want to lead differently? The palace staff noticed the change. Erina's presence became more engaging. She laughed with attendants, asked questions of scholars, and even teased the younger guards with playful remarks. People began to see her not just as a distant royal figure, but as someone approachable, thoughtful, and clever. However, not all challenges were within the palace walls. One morning, Valerian received news of a neighboring system in conflict, with refugees seeking aid. The council debated whether to intervene. Some argued that Valerian should focus on itself, maintaining tradition and avoiding unnecessary risks. Others suggested that helping would demonstrate strength and compassion. Erina listened carefully to both sides. She turned to Ethan. Humans. Help others even when it is risky, she said. It is worth it. We should do the same. The queen, standing nearby, nodded in approval. You speak wisely, Erina. Perhaps it is time for your voice to guide not just this palace but our people. The princess's first public speech in years was scheduled for the council assembly. It was a test of her leadership and courage. Citizens and officials gathered, curious to hear the once silent heir speak. Ethan stood discreetly at the back, ready to support her if needed. When Erina stepped forward, silence filled the hall. She looked around, taking in the faces of Valerian's people, then straightened her shoulders and began to speak. Her voice was clear, confident, and warm. People of Valerian, she said, our neighbors are in need. We have the power to help them. We must act not only with strength, but with wisdom, courage, and compassion. This is our duty not only as rulers, but as those who care for the galaxy. There were murmurs of approval, some skeptical glances, but her words carried authority. She continued, explaining a careful plan for aid, showing insight into strategy, logistics, and diplomacy. When she concluded, the assembly erupted into applause. Erina's confidence had grown beyond expectation. She turned to Ethan afterward, a playful sparkle in her eyes. Did humans always speak like this? She asked, teasing. Some do, he replied with a grin. But few speak with your kind of courage. Even the council members who had doubted her were impressed. Erina's laughter and clever speech had become a symbol of hope and change, a signal that the future of Valerian was bright and innovative, beyond the palace and politics. Erina and Ethan continued their explorations. They climbed cliffs, visited hidden waterfalls, and even camped under the stars. Each adventure strengthened their bond, their trust, and their understanding of one another. Erina discovered that she could laugh freely, make jokes, and even tease Ethan for his occasional human clumsiness. One night, while watching the twin moons reflect on a quiet lake, Erina spoke softly. "Ethan, you made me see the world differently. I understand now that words, laughter, they are not weakness." Ethan smiled, placing a hand over hers. "You were never weak. You were waiting for the right reason to speak. And now, look at you." Princess laughed softly. "Still stumble," she admitted, a small blush on her cheeks. "But I am learning," Queen observed from a distance, pride filling her heart. Her daughter had become a leader, a diplomat, and a friend. She had found her voice, her courage, and her laughter, all thanks to the patient human who had shown her that strength could come from connection and understanding, not fear or isolation. As time passed, Erina's leadership grew. She proposed new programs to aid neighboring systems, introduced innovative approaches to governance, and even encouraged the integration of human techniques in Valerian's defense strategies. Citizens marveled at her intelligence, her charm, and her laughter. For the first time, the princess was fully herself, a balance of Valerian tradition and human-inspired. Curiosity and courage, even the alien threats that once seemed distant, were addressed with her guidance. Strategic decisions, once the responsibility of the council alone, now included Erina's insight. She listened carefully, questioned wisely, and acted decisively. The planet's security and prosperity improved under her influence, and her reputation grew not as a silent royal, but as a brilliant, thoughtful leader. One afternoon, the queen invited Ethan and Erina to the palace balcony. The twin suns bathed the city in warm light. Citizens below waved, smiled, and cheered. Erina turned to Ethan, her eyes reflecting the light. "Humans are different," she said softly. "They laugh. They fall. They try, and they teach." Ethan chuckled. "We are messy, unpredictable, sometimes ridiculous, but yes, we try." Erina smiled fully, freely, a smile that lit her face like the twin suns above. "And I want to lead like that? With laughter, and courage, and understanding." Ethan nodded. "And you will. You're already doing it." In the weeks that followed, Erina's bond with the citizens deepened. She visited schools, gardens, and local workshops, listening to people, laughing with them, and encouraging their ideas. She introduced programs inspired by human collaboration, teaching citizens that courage and curiosity could coexist. Valerian thrived, not just because of tradition or strength, but because its heir had discovered the power of connection, humor, and speech. Finally, the queen addressed the council. "Erina has proven that leadership is not measured only by strength or silence. It is measured by the courage to speak, the wisdom to listen, and the joy to laugh. Our people have a future brighter than ever, thanks to her voice and to the human who helped awaken it." The council members nodded, some reluctantly, others sincerely. Even the most skeptical acknowledged the change in the princess. One evening, as the twin moons rose and reflected across the palace fountains, Erina and Ethan walked quietly through the gardens. Erina paused, turning to him. "Ethan, you made me laugh. You made me speak. You helped me see myself." Her voice was steady now, no longer hesitant. Ethan smiled, placing his hand gently over hers. "I just reminded you what was always inside. You had courage, curiosity, and brilliance. I just helped you notice it." Erina laughed softly, then leaned closer. "Humans are strange," she said teasingly. "And Valerians are beautiful," Ethan replied, smiling warmly. The princess laughed freely, sound that echoed across the palace gardens, bright and full of life. It was a sound that had been missing for years, now restored through friendship, trust, and shared courage. The palace was quiet but alive. The citizens hopeful, the council respectful, and the queen proud. Irina had transformed not just as a princess of Valerian, but as a leader, a diplomat, and a bridge between worlds. Her voice, once silent, now guided her people. Her laughter, once hidden, now inspired them, and through it all by her side was Ethan, the human who had made her see that words and laughter were not just sounds, they were the beginnings of life, connection, and hope. The stars sparkled above. The twin moons reflected across the lakes and fountains, and Valerian entered a new era of cooperation, courage, and joy. Irena had found her voice, her laughter, and her strength hand with them. A future that was bright, bold, and alive. The story of the silent princess had ended. The story of the laughing, speaking, courageous princess had only just begun.